The orc warrior collapsed against the fence post at the edge of the property, her green fingers curling around the weathered wood as she fought to keep herself upright. Petra Jameson looked up from where he was mending a broken wagon wheel in the yard, his calloused hands stilling on the spoke as he took in the sight of her. She was tall, perhaps 6 feet, with broad shoulders that slumped with exhaustion, and her dark hair hung in matted tangles around her face. Her leather armor was torn in several places, revealing green skin marked with old scars and fresh bruises. Most striking were the tusks that jutted from her lower jaw, small but unmistakable, and the way her pointed ears drooped with fatigue. "Please," she rasped, her voice cracking. "Just scraps. Anything you can spare." Petra set down his tools slowly, rising to his full height. He was a large man himself, broad across the chest from years of farm work, with sun-weathered skin and sandy brown hair that fell across his forehead. His blue eyes studied her carefully, taking in the way she swayed on her feet, the hollow look in her amber eyes, the way her hand trembled where it gripped the fence. He had been a soldier once, before he had taken over his father's farm 3 years ago, and he recognized the look of someone who had been pushed beyond their limits. "How long since you ate?" he asked, his voice steady and calm. She blinked at him, seeming surprised that he had spoken to her at all rather than chasing her off with a pitchfork or worse. 4 days, she admitted. "Maybe 5, lost count." Petra nodded once decisively. "Wait here." He strode toward his farmhouse, a sturdy structure of wood and stone that sat nestled among rolling fields of wheat and barley. The autumn sun was beginning to sink toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the land. He disappeared inside, and the orc woman sagged further against the fence, her eyes sliding closed. She had expected rejection, or violence, or at best a crust of bread tossed her way like one might feed a stray dog. That was all her kind could hope for in human lands. When the door opened again, Petra emerged carrying not scraps but 2 plates piled with food. Fresh bread, roasted chicken, potatoes with butter, and greens from his garden. He crossed the yard and pushed open the gate in the fence. "Come on," he said. "Table is set for 2. She stared at him as though he had sprouted wings. "I asked for scraps." "I heard you," he replied. "But I do not feed people like animals. You want to eat, you eat at my table." Her legs shook as she pushed herself upright, and for a moment he thought she might refuse out of pride or suspicion. But hunger won out, as he had known it would. She followed him across the yard with halting steps, her eyes darting around as if expecting an ambush. He led her not inside the house, but to a sturdy wooden table that sat under a large oak tree beside the barn. It was where he often took his meals in fair weather, enjoying the breeze and the view of his fields. He set the plates down and gestured to one of the benches. "Sit." She lowered herself onto the bench with a grunt, and he noticed the way she winced, favoring her left side. Broken rib, he guessed, or at least badly bruised. He took his own seat across from her and began to eat, keeping his movements casual and unhurried. She watched him for a long moment, then picked up the fork with fingers that trembled. The first bite seemed to undo something in her, and she ate with the desperate efficiency of the truly starving, barely pausing to breathe. Petra ate his own meal at a normal pace, giving her space to satisfy the worst of her hunger. When she finally slowed, he spoke. "What is your name?" She looked up, a piece of bread halfway to her mouth. "Grisha," she said after a pause. "Petra," he offered. "This is my farm, has been my family's land for 3 generations. Grisha nodded slowly, setting down the bread. "Why are you being kind to me? I am an orc." "I noticed," he said dryly. "You are also starving and hurt. That matters more to me than what you are." She studied him with those sharp amber eyes, and he could see the intelligence behind them, the wariness born of hard experience. "Most humans would have shot me on sight. Most humans are fools," he replied. "Finish your food, then we will see about those injuries." "I cannot pay you," she said, a note of defiance creeping into her voice. "I have nothing." "Did I ask for payment?" He raised an eyebrow. "Eat." She did, though more slowly now, savoring each bite. When both plates were clean, Petra stood and gathered them. "There is a water pump by the barn," he said. "You can wash up there. I will get bandages and salve." Grisha rose as well, still moving stiffly. "Why?" she asked again, frustration and confusion mixing in her voice. "Why help me?" Petra paused, considering. "My father used to say that you measure a man not by how he treats his equals, but by how he treats those who can do nothing for him. I suppose I am my father's son." He headed toward the house, then called over his shoulder, "And because it is the right thing to do." Reason enough. She stood there in the gathering dusk, watching him go, and something tight and painful in her chest began to loosen. She made her way to the pump and worked the handle, gasping at the shock of cold water. She scrubbed her face and hands, washing away days of grime and blood, both her own and that of others. The water that pooled at her feet ran brown, then pink, then clear. When Petra returned with a basket of medical supplies, she was sitting on an upturned bucket, looking more alert than she had when she had first arrived. He set the basket down and knelt beside her. "Where are you hurt worst?" "Ribs," she admitted. "Left side and my shoulder." "Let me see." His voice was matter-of-fact professional. She hesitated, then pulled aside the torn leather of her armor and the rough shirt beneath. The entire left side of her torso was a massive bruise, purple-black and angry-looking. Petra let out a low whistle. "What did that?" "Warhammer," she said. "3 days ago, maybe 4. His fingers probed gently along her ribs and she hissed in pain but did not pull away. "Not broken," he said finally. "Cracked, maybe, or just badly bruised, needs binding." He pulled a long strip of clean linen from the basket. "This will help. Arms up." She raised her arms with difficulty, and he wrapped the linen around her torso, working with practiced efficiency. His hands were gentle but firm, and she found herself relaxing under his touch despite herself. When he tied off the binding, he sat back on his heels. "Better." "Yes," she admitted. The support did help, taking some of the strain off her damaged ribs. Now the shoulder. She turned, revealing a deep gash that ran across her left shoulder blade. It had scabbed over but looked inflamed around the edges. Petra cleaned it carefully with water and a tincture that stung enough to make her grunt, then applied a thick salve that smelled of herbs and honey. He covered it with a clean bandage, securing it in place. "Any other injuries?" he asked. "Nothing that will kill me," she said. "That is not what I asked." She turned to face him, something almost like amusement flickering in her eyes. "You are persistent. My mother used to say the same thing." He began repacking the basket. "You have smaller cuts and scrapes, but those will heal on their own. You need rest more than anything else." "I should go," Grisha said, though she made no move to stand. "I have taken enough of your charity." "Go where?" Petra asked. "It is nearly dark, you are injured and exhausted, and there is rain coming." As if to emphasize his words, thunder rumbled in the distance. "You will not make it far. I have survived worse." "I am sure you have." He stood, brushing off his knees. "But you do not have to tonight. The barn has clean straw and it is dry. You are welcome to sleep there." She stared at him again with that same expression of bafflement. "You are letting an orc sleep on your property. What will your neighbors say?" "My neighbors are 2 miles away in either direction," he said. "And what they think is their concern, not mine. Come on." He picked up the basket and headed toward the barn, not waiting to see if she would follow. After a moment, Grisha pushed herself to her feet and trailed after him. The barn was large and well-maintained, with stalls for horses and a milk cow, and a loft filled with sweet-smelling hay. Petra climbed the ladder to the loft and spread out a thick blanket over the hay in one corner. "This should be comfortable enough," he said. "There are more blankets in that chest if you get cold." She climbed up after him, moving carefully to protect her ribs. The loft was warm and dry, and the hay did indeed look comfortable. "Thank you," she said quietly. Petra nodded. "I will be up early to tend the animals, try to get some sleep." He started back down the ladder, then paused. "Grisha, you are safe here. No one will bother you." She did not respond, but he saw the way her shoulders relaxed slightly at his words. He left the barn, closing the door behind him but not latching it. Back in his house, he banked the fire and prepared for bed, but sleep was slow to come. He kept thinking about the orc warrior in his barn, about the desperate hunger in her eyes, and the way she had flinched when he had first moved toward her. He wondered what had brought her to such a state, what battles she had fought, and why she was alone. In the barn loft, Grisha lay on the blanket and stared up at the wooden beams above her. The pain in her ribs had dulled to a manageable ache thanks to the binding, and her shoulder felt better with the salve. But it was not physical comfort that kept her awake. It was the memory of a human man setting a table for two instead of tossing her scraps. It was the gentle competence of his hands tending her wounds. It was the way he had looked at her without fear or disgust, just calm assessment and what might have been concern. She had been cast out of her clan 2 weeks ago for refusing to participate in a raid on a human village. She had argued that attacking farmers and merchants would only bring more soldiers down on their heads, that there were better ways to secure food and supplies. Her clan leader had called her weak, corrupted by human thinking, and had given her a choice: join the raid or leave. She had left, and several of the younger warriors had taken it upon themselves to make sure she understood the consequences of her choice. They had beaten her badly and taken everything she owned except the damaged armor she wore. Since then, she had been wandering, trying to stay ahead of both human patrols and her former clan. She had not eaten in days, having no coin and no skills for hunting in human lands, which were so different from the northern wastes where she had grown up. She had been prepared to die when she had seen the farm, had expected rejection when she had asked for scraps. The reality of what had happened instead was almost harder to process than violence would have been. Finally, exhaustion dragged her down into sleep, deep and dreamless. She woke to the sound of a rooster crowing and pale dawn light filtering through gaps in the barn walls. For a moment she was disoriented, then memory returned. She sat up slowly, testing her injuries. Her ribs still ached, but the binding helped, and her shoulder was stiff, but the inflammation seemed less. She could hear movement below, the soft sounds of animals being tended. Grisha climbed down from the loft to find Petra mucking out the horse stalls. He looked up when she appeared. "Morning, how did you sleep?" "Better than I have in weeks," she admitted. "Good." He finished with the stall and moved to the next. "There is a well behind the house if you want fresh water. I will have breakfast ready in about an hour." She wanted to help, to do something to earn the kindness he was showing her, but she was not sure what a human farmer would want from an orc warrior. "Is there work I can do?" she asked. "I am not skilled at farm tasks, but I am strong." Petra paused, leaning on his pitchfork. "Can you chop wood?" "Yes." "Then there is a pile of logs by the side of the house that needs splitting. Axe is in the shed, but take it easy on those ribs." Grisha nodded and headed outside. The morning air was cool and fresh, washed clean by the night rain that had indeed come as Petra had predicted. She found the logs and the axe, a well-balanced tool with a sharp edge. She began to work, falling into the rhythm of it, enjoying the way her muscles stretched and warmed. She paced herself, mindful of her injuries, but it felt good to be doing something productive. Petra watched from the barn door for a moment, noted the efficient way she handled the axe, the power in her swings despite her injuries. Then he returned to his own tasks. An hour later, he called her in for breakfast. They ate together again at the outdoor table, a simple meal of porridge with honey, eggs, and bacon. Grisha ate with better manners than the night before, no longer quite so desperately hungry. Petra noticed the neat pile of split wood by the house. "You did good work," he said. "It is little enough in exchange for food and shelter." "It is not an exchange," he said, "but I will not turn down help if you are offering it." They fell into a pattern over the next few days. Grisha would wake early, tend to whatever tasks Petra set for her, and in return he fed her and let her sleep in the barn. He changed her bandages each evening, noting with satisfaction how her injuries were healing. She grew stronger, the hollow look fading from her face, the tremor disappearing from her hands. On the fourth day, Petra was repairing a section of fence when he looked up to see 3 riders approaching along the road. He recognized them immediately and cursed under his breath. Grisha was working in the vegetable garden, pulling weeds, but she had gone still, watching the riders with wary eyes. The riders drew up at the gate. The leader was a man named Marcus Holloway, who owned a larger farm to the east. With him were 2 of his farmhands, both young and stupid-looking. Marcus was not a bad man exactly, but he was narrow-minded and suspicious of anything different. "Petra," Marcus called out, his eyes fixed on Grisha. "What in the name of all the gods is that doing on your property?" Petra straightened, setting his hammer down carefully. "That is Grisha. She is helping me with some work around the farm." "It is an orc," Marcus said, as if Petra might not have noticed. "Are you mad?" "My sanity is fine, thank you for asking." Petra kept his voice level. "Is there something I can help you with, Marcus?" "You cannot trust those things," one of the farmhands piped up. "They are savages. Monsters." Grisha said nothing, but Petra saw the way her jaw tightened, the way her hands curled into fists at her sides. He stepped forward, putting himself between the riders and the garden. "Grisha has been here almost a week now. She has worked hard, caused no trouble, and been better company than some humans I could name. Now, did you ride all the way over here just to insult my guest, or was there an actual purpose to this visit?" Marcus looked taken aback by Petra's sharp tone. They had been friendly neighbors for years. "I came to warn you that there are orc raiders in the area," he said. "Hit a farm about 10 miles north 2 nights ago, stole livestock, burned a barn. I thought you should know." "I appreciate the warning," Petra said. "I will keep watch." Marcus glanced at Grisha again. "You sure you want that around? Could be a scout for the raiders." "If she were a scout, she has had plenty of time to signal her friends and slit my throat in the night," Petra pointed out. "She has done neither. I trust her." The words hung in the air. Grisha looked at Petra, something unreadable in her expression. Marcus shook his head. "Your funeral, Jameson. Do not say I did not warn you." He wheeled his horse around and the 3 riders departed, hoofbeats fading into the distance. Petra turned to find Grisha standing, earth still clinging to her hands. "You trust me," she said. It was not quite a question. "I do," he replied simply. "Should I not? You do not know me. You do not know what I have done." "Then tell me." He came closer, his blue eyes searching hers. "Tell me what brought you to my fence, starving and beaten." She looked away. "I was cast out of my clan for refusing to participate in raids like the one your neighbor described. My clan leader said I was weak, corrupted by human thinking. Others in the clan made sure I understood their disappointment before I left." "The injuries," Petra said quietly. "Yes." She met his eyes again. I do not prey on farmers and merchants, I never have, but that makes me a traitor to my people. Or it makes them wrong and you right, he suggested. She laughed, a short bitter sound. You think very simply. Maybe. He picked up his hammer again. But I have found that right and wrong are usually simpler than people want to admit. Attacking innocent people is wrong. Refusing to do so is right. Does not matter whether you are orc or human, that does not change. Your neighbors do not see it that way. I told you before, I do not much care what my neighbors think. He returned to his fence mending. You are welcome here as long as you want to stay, Grisha. Whether that is another day or another season is up to you. She stood there for a long moment, watching him work. Then she returned to the garden and began pulling weeds again, but something had shifted between them. That evening, as Petra tended her wounds, changing the bandages that were now barely needed, their fingers brushed and neither pulled away immediately. A week passed, then two. The autumn deepened, leaves turning gold and red. Grisha's injuries healed fully, but she did not leave. There was always more work to be done on a farm, and she found herself enjoying the simple rhythm of it. She learned to milk the cow, though her large fingers made it awkward at first. She learned to gather eggs from the chickens without startling them. She proved herself unexpectedly adept at mending things, her strong hands gentle enough for delicate work when needed. Petra found himself looking forward to her company. She was intelligent and observant, with a dry sense of humor that caught him off guard. In the evenings, they would sit at the outdoor table long after the meal was finished, talking about everything and nothing. She told him about the northern wastes where she had grown up, the harsh beauty of that landscape. He told her about his time as a soldier, the battles he had fought and the friends he had lost. "Why did you leave the army?" she asked one evening. "My father died," he said. "Someone needed to run the farm, and I had a younger brother who was still soldiering. Seemed like the right time. And truthfully, I was tired of killing." "But you were good at it," she said. It was not a question. She had seen the way he moved, the awareness he maintained of his surroundings. He had the bearing of a warrior. Being good at something does not mean you should do it forever. He swirled the cider in his cup. "What about you? How did you become a warrior?" "All orcs are warriors," she said. "It is expected. We train from childhood. I was good at it too." She flexed her hands. "But I never liked the raiding, the killing for the sake of it. Our clan was not always that way. When I was young, we only fought when we had to defend our territory or secure necessary resources. But leadership changed, and with it the values. Strength became more important than wisdom, aggression more valued than restraint." "That sounds familiar," Petra said quietly. Human kingdoms are not so different. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds. Finally, Grisha spoke again. "I should probably move on soon. Winter is coming and you will not need so much help." Petra felt something cold settle in his chest at her words. "What if I want you to stay anyway?" She looked at him, her amber eyes catching the light from the lantern on the table. "Why?" "Because I like having you here." The words came out more blunt than he had intended, but he did not take them back. "Because you work hard and you are good company. Because this farm feels less lonely with you in it. People will talk," she said softly. "They already whisper about the human who harbors an orc. Let them whisper." He leaned forward. "I am asking you to stay, Grisha. Not as a worker, not as someone who owes me. Just stay." She was quiet for a long time. "You are offering me a home," she said finally. "Yes. No one has offered me that in a very long time." Her voice was rough with emotion. "Not since I left the clan, then say yes." She looked down at her hands, those strong green hands that had wielded weapons and now pulled weeds and gathered eggs. "Yes," she whispered. "I will stay." The relief that flooded through Petra was almost overwhelming. He reached across the table and took one of her hands in his. Her fingers were calloused and warm, and they curled around his own. They sat like that, hands joined, until the stars came out above them. Winter arrived with cold winds and early snow. Grisha moved from the barn into the house, taking the small bedroom that had once belonged to Petra's brother. It was strange at first, living in such close quarters, but they found their rhythm. She proved adept at cooking, creating dishes that combined human and orcish traditions in interesting ways. He taught her to read, spending long evenings by the fire with books and writing materials. It was during one of these evenings, in the depths of winter, that something changed again. They were sitting close together on the bench by the fireplace, Grisha painstakingly working through a passage in a book. She stumbled over a word and looked up at Petra for help and found him watching her with an expression she could not quite name. "What?" she asked. "Nothing," he said, but his voice was odd. "You had ink on your cheek." He reached up and brushed at her face, his thumb tracing across her cheekbone. The touch lingered longer than necessary. Grisha went very still. "Petra," she said quietly. "I know," he replied, his hand still cupping her face. "I know all the reasons why this is complicated. But I need to tell you that somewhere between setting that table for two and now, I have fallen in love with you." Her breath caught. "You love me, an orc. I love you, Grisha. All of you. Your strength and your honor, your quiet humor and your determination. The way you handle chickens like they are made of glass even though you could snap a man's neck with those same hands. The way you furrow your brow when you are reading, all of it." Tears pricked at her eyes. "I do not know how to do this," she admitted. "I have never felt this way before. But when I think about leaving, about being anywhere else, it feels wrong. And when you smile at me, my heart does this strange thing in my chest." "That sounds like love to me," he said gently. "I am afraid," she whispered. "What if your people come for you? What if they hurt you because of me? Then we will face it together." He leaned forward slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. She did not. Their lips met in a kiss that was gentle at first, then deeper, full of all the longing that had been building between them for months. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Grisha laughed shakily. "The clan would disown me even more thoroughly if they knew about this. My neighbors will probably try to burn down my house," Petra added. "We are very foolish," she said. "Probably." He kissed her again. "I do not care." They took their time, learning each other through that long winter. There was passion, yes, but also gentleness and laughter and moments of awkwardness that they navigated together. Grisha had never felt more seen, more valued than she did in Petra's arms. And Petra had never felt more complete than when she smiled at him in the morning light. Spring came slowly, the snow melting to reveal the earth beneath. They worked side by side to prepare the fields for planting, and Grisha proved herself just as capable with a plow as she had been with an axe. Neighbors who came by found less to gossip about than they might have hoped, seeing only two people working hard and clearly content in each other's company. It was on a warm day in late spring that trouble finally found them. Grisha was working in the vegetable garden when she heard the sounds of many feet approaching. She looked up to see a band of orcs cresting the hill, at least a dozen of them, armed and armored. Her blood ran cold when she recognized the lead warrior. "Drakkar," she breathed. Petra was in the barn, but he emerged at the sound of her voice, his hand automatically going to the sword he now kept nearby. He had known this day might come. The orc stopped at the fence, and Drakkar, a massive male with scars covering his arms, looked at Grisha with contempt. "So the rumors are true," he said in the orcish tongue. "You live with a human, share his bed, I am told." Grisha straightened, moving to stand between the warband and Petra. She replied in the same language. "What I do is no longer your concern. I am not of the clan anymore, remember. You shame us all, Drakkar spat. Bad enough that you refuse to fight. Now you rut with a human like an animal. Petra could not understand the words, but the tone was clear enough. Grisha, he said quietly in the common tongue, what do they want? To punish me, she replied, switching back to his language. To make an example. That is not going to happen. Petra moved to stand beside her, his hand on his sword hilt. He was one man against a dozen, and he knew those odds were not good, but he would die before he let them take her. Drakkar laughed, switching to heavily accented common speech. The human thinks he can protect you. Amusing. The human has a name, Petra said coldly. And yes, I will protect her, with my life if necessary. Noble words. Let us see if you can back them up. Drakkar gestured, and the warband began to spread out, preparing to surround them. Grisha felt a terrible calm settle over her. She had not carried a weapon in months, had almost forgotten what it felt like to prepare for battle. But the skills were still there, written into her muscles and bones. She moved to the woodpile and picked up the splitting axe, testing its weight. Beside her, Petra drew his sword. I love you, she said quietly. I love you too, he replied. No matter what happens. Drakkar was about to give the order to attack when another voice rang out across the field. Hold! Everyone turned to see a figure approaching from the opposite direction. She was an orc woman, older than Grisha, with white streaks in her black hair and deep lines around her eyes. She wore the robes of a clan elder and carried a staff carved with intricate symbols. Behind her came two younger orcs, both female, both watching the scene with worried eyes. Elder Kara, Drakkar said, surprise clear in his voice. What are you doing here? Stopping you from making a terrible mistake, Kara replied. She walked past the warband without fear, coming to stand before Grisha. It has been many months, child. Grisha lowered the axe slightly. Elder, I did not expect to see you again. I have been searching for you since word reached me of what happened. Kara's eyes were kind. I was away visiting the southern clans when you were cast out, or it never would have happened. The clan leader made his decision, Grisha said. Balgur is a fool, Kara said bluntly. And he has led our clan into disgrace with his raids and his violence. Half the clan has already left, disgusted by his leadership. I am gathering those who remain to form a new clan, one that follows the old ways. Ways of honor and wisdom, not blind aggression. Hope flickered in Grisha's chest, but she kept her voice steady. That is good to hear. But I am no longer part of the clan. I want you to be part of the new clan, Kara said. You and others like you who were cast out for standing by your principles. We need warriors of honor, Grisha. We need people who remember what it means to be more than just raiders and killers. She lives with a human, Drakkar interjected. She has betrayed her blood. Kara turned to him, her eyes flashing. She has found love and built a life. How is that betrayal? We are not at war with all humans, Drakkar, no matter how much Balgur might wish it. The world is changing. We must change with it or be destroyed. The old ways forbid mixing with humans, Drakkar insisted. The old ways that I learned as a girl said nothing about that, Kara countered. That is Balgur's teaching, not our true traditions. Strength and honor, those are our traditions. And I see both in this woman. She turned back to Grisha. I am not asking you to leave this life you have built, only to remember that you are still orc, still part of our people. The new clan will need a link to the human communities, someone who can build bridges instead of burning them. Grisha looked at Petra, a question in her eyes. He nodded slightly, trusting her to make the right choice. She turned back to Kara. I will not leave him. This is my home now. I am not asking you to, Kara said gently. I am asking you to be part of both worlds. To show that it is possible for our peoples to coexist, even to love one another. Will you do this? Tears ran down Grisha's face, cutting clean tracks through the dust on her cheeks. "Yes," she managed. "Yes, I will." Kara smiled and placed a hand on Grisha's shoulder. "Then you are welcomed back to your people, with honor and respect." She turned to Drakkar. "You and those who follow Balgur's path should leave now. You are not welcome here." Drakkar looked like he wanted to argue, but the presence of an elder was not something to be dismissed lightly. He spat on the ground, then turned and stalked away. Most of the warband followed him, though Petra noted that 2 of the younger warriors stayed behind, moving to stand with the orcs who had accompanied Kara. When the last of Drakkar's group had disappeared over the hill, the tension drained from the air. Grisha lowered the axe completely and found herself pulled into an embrace by Elder Kara. "You have grown strong," the older woman murmured, "and you have found something rare and precious. Treasure it." "I will," Grisha promised. Kara pulled back and looked at Petra with frank curiosity. "So you are the human who won her heart. You must be something special." Petra felt oddly self-conscious under her scrutiny. "I just offered her a meal," he said. "Everything else followed from that." "Kindness begets kindness," Kara said. "A simple truth that too many forget. I am Kara, elder of what will be the Broken Fang clan once we gather enough members. Petra Jameson, this is my farm." He sheathed his sword. "You and yours are welcome here, though I am afraid I do not have enough food prepared for guests." "We do not mean to impose," Kara said, "but if you would allow us to camp on your land tonight, we would be grateful. We have traveled far and could use the rest." "Of course." Petra gestured toward a flat area near the creek. "There is good water there and space to set up tents. I will see what I can provide for a meal." That evening was strange and wonderful. Grisha and Petra prepared a large meal with what they had, and the orcs contributed food from their own supplies. They all ate together under the stars, and Petra found himself in the surreal position of sharing his table with 7 orcs. But Kara and her followers were nothing like the raiders that haunted human nightmares. They were thoughtful people, weary from travel and struggle, trying to find a better path. One of the young orcs who had stayed behind, a female named Yara, spoke shyly to Grisha. "We heard stories about you, how you stood up to Balgur and refused to raid the human village. You gave me courage to leave too." Grisha was moved by this. "I am glad you found your way out. Balgur's path leads only to destruction." "We are trying to build something better," Yara said, "but it is hard. Humans fear us and other orc clans think we are weak." "Strength comes in many forms," Petra interjected. "Takes more courage to walk away from a fight than to start one sometimes." Kara nodded approvingly. "Wise words. You are a warrior, yes. I can tell from the way you carry yourself." Petra said. "Now I am a farmer." "And that is a kind of warrior too," Kara said. "You battle the land, the weather, the endless work. You build instead of destroy. Both require strength." The conversation went on late into the night. Petra learned about the situation among the orc clans, the internal divisions and the pressure they faced from human expansion into their traditional territories. Kara learned about the challenges of farming this land, the isolation of frontier life, the prejudices that people like Petra and Grisha faced. When the orcs finally retired to their tents by the creek, Petra and Grisha sat alone at their table. "That was unexpected," Petra said. "Which part?" Grisha asked. "The warband coming to kill us or the elder showing up to save us? Both, I suppose." He took her hand. "Are you all right?" "I am more than all right," she said wonderingly. "I thought I had lost my people forever. But now there is a chance to be part of something good, something that aligns with what I believe. And I do not have to give up this life with you to have it." "Kara seems like a good leader," Petra observed. "Wise and fair." "She was always my favorite among the elders," Grisha admitted. She taught me that strength without wisdom is just brutality, that honor means more than victory. I like her, Petra decided, even if she did scare the hell out of me when she showed up. Grisha laughed. You hit it well. You were ready to fight a dozen warriors to protect me. Always, he said seriously. I meant what I said. I will protect you with my life. I know. She leaned in and kissed him softly. That is one of the many reasons I love you. They sat together in the darkness, listening to the sound of the creek and the low voices from the orc camp. The future was still uncertain, still fraught with challenges and dangers. But for the first time in a long time, it also held hope. Kara and her followers stayed for 3 days, resting and making plans. During that time, Grisha and Petra learned more about the new clan. It would be small at first, perhaps 30 or 40 orcs, those who had left Balgur's leadership or been cast out for various reasons. They would settle in the foothills to the west, in a valley that had good water and defensible positions, but was far enough from human settlements to avoid immediate conflict. We will need to trade with humans eventually, Kara said on the second evening. We cannot be completely self-sufficient, and isolation will only breed more suspicion on both sides. Petra could help with that, Grisha suggested. He knows the local farmers and merchants. He is respected. Some respect me, Petra corrected. Others think I am crazy for harboring an orc. But they have not burned down your farm or driven you out, Kara observed. That suggests a certain level of acceptance, or at least tolerance, or they are just waiting to see what happens, Petra said dryly. But he could see where this was going. You want me to be an intermediary, to vouch for your clan when you need to trade. If you are willing, Kara said, I will not force this burden on you, but having a human advocate, especially one who is partnered with one of our own, could make the difference between success and failure. Petra looked at Grisha, who was watching him anxiously. He knew what his answer would be before he spoke. I will help however I can, but I am just one man, one farmer. I cannot guarantee that people will listen. One voice is better than none, Kara said. And sometimes one voice is all it takes to start change. When the orcs finally left, heading west toward their new home, Grisha felt a bittersweet pang. She was glad to see them go, glad to have her quiet life with Petra back. But she also felt connected to them in a way she had not expected, part of something larger than herself again. Summer came in full, and the farm flourished under their combined efforts. Word spread about the new orc clan in the hills, and reactions were mixed. Some humans were alarmed, convinced it was the prelude to raids. Others were cautiously optimistic, especially when they heard that the clan was led by an elder who preached peace and coexistence. Petra found himself in the unexpected role of mediator. When a delegation from the new Broken Fang clan came to the nearest human town to propose trade agreements, Petra went with them. He stood before the town council and spoke of his experiences with Grisha, of her honor and her work ethic, of the kindness and wisdom of Elder Kara. It was an awkward, tense meeting, and not everyone was convinced. But enough were willing to give the idea a chance that a trial agreement was reached. The orcs would trade furs, herbs, and crafted goods for grain, metal tools, and cloth. The first trading day was held in neutral territory, a clearing halfway between the town and the orc settlement. Both sides came armed, wary of treachery, but the trades went smoothly. Grisha was there, helping to facilitate communication and vouching for the quality of orc goods. Petra was there too, his presence helping to ease the fears of the human merchants. It was not perfect. There were incidents, moments of tension when old prejudices flared up. But slowly, grudgingly, something like trust began to build. Human traders who dealt fairly found themselves welcomed back by the orcs. Orcs who kept their word and delivered quality goods found more humans willing to do business with them. Through it all, Petra and Grisha remained at the center, their relationship a living example that the two peoples could coexist. They faced harassment and threats from both sides. A group of young human men tried to burn their barn one night, and Petra fought them off with the help of Grisha and 3 orc warriors who happened to be visiting. A pair of orcs from a different clan confronted Grisha at a trading day, calling her a traitor and a disgrace. Elder Kara herself intervened in that situation, shaming the accusers and sending them away. But for every threat and insult, there were also small victories. A human widow asked if one of the orc women could teach her daughter to hunt, since she had no sons and needed someone to provide game. An orc craftsman and a human blacksmith began collaborating on new designs, combining their knowledge to create better tools. Children from both communities, left to their own devices while parents traded, began to play together, ignorant of the prejudices that divided their elders. Autumn came again, marking a full year since the day Grisha had collapsed at Petra's fence. They were preparing for the harvest when Petra came to her with a question that made her heart skip a beat. "Marry me," he said. They were in the kitchen preparing dinner, and he just turned to her and said it without preamble. Grisha nearly dropped the knife she was holding. "What? I want you to be my wife," he said. "Officially, in the eyes of the law and the gods and anyone else who cares to witness it." "I love you, Grisha. I want everyone to know that we belong to each other." "Marriage," she said slowly, "that is a human custom." "It is a legal bond," he said. "It would give you rights to this land, to everything I own. If something happened to me, you would be protected. And it would make it harder for people to claim our relationship is not legitimate." She understood the practical arguments, but that was not what made her eyes fill with tears. "You want me to be your wife," she repeated, "more than anything." He took her hands in his. "I know it will be complicated. I know people will object, but I do not care. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, and I want the whole world to know it." "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." He kissed her then, and she felt the joy radiating through him. They held each other in the kitchen for a long time, just savoring the moment. The wedding itself was a unique affair. They held it on the farm, in the open air, in the space between the house and the barn where they had shared so many meals. Elder Kara performed the orc portion of the ceremony, binding their hands with cords and speaking blessings in the old orcish tongue. A human priest, one of the more progressive clergy from a neighboring town, performed the human portion, pronouncing them husband and wife in the eyes of the church and the law. The guests were an unusual mix. Perhaps 24 humans attended, mostly Petra's family and friends, those who had come to accept his choice or at least respect it. Twice that many orcs came from the Broken Fang clan, dressed in their finest and bearing gifts. The two groups mingled awkwardly at first, but food and drink worked their usual magic, and by the end of the evening there was laughter and music and dancing. Grisha wore a dress of green cloth that matched her skin, simple but elegant, and flowers woven into her dark hair. Petra wore his best clothes and could not stop smiling. They danced together as the sun set, surrounded by the disparate community they had helped to build, and for that moment, everything was perfect. The first winter as husband and wife was hard. The harvest had been good, but prices were low and money was tight. Petra sold some of his livestock to make ends meet, and Grisha took on additional work for the orc clan, making trading runs and serving as a translator. They struggled, but they did it together, and somehow that made it bearable. Spring brought new challenges. A group of human raiders, angry about the orc presence in the region, attacked a trade caravan. 3 orcs were killed and several humans injured. Tensions skyrocketed. There were calls from some quarters to drive the Broken Fang clan out by force, and some orcs argued that they should abandon the peace effort and return to the old ways of raiding. Petra and Grisha found themselves working overtime to keep the fragile peace from shattering completely. They organized meetings between community leaders, mediated disputes, and vouched for both sides. It was exhausting and often thankless work, and more than once they went to bed wondering if it was worth it. But then there were moments that reminded them why they persevered. Like when a human child fell into a ravine and was rescued by an orc hunter who happened to be nearby. Or when an orc settlement was threatened by a forest fire and human volunteers came to help fight the flames. These small moments of cooperation and kindness gave them hope. 2 years after their wedding, Grisha came to Petra with news that changed everything. "I am pregnant," she said. He stared at her, processing the words. "Pregnant, you are sure?" The healer confirmed it. She was watching him anxiously. "I know we have not talked about children." "I know this complicates things even more." Petra swept her into his arms, laughing with pure joy. "Complicates things. Grisha, this is wonderful. We are going to have a baby." Her relief was palpable. "You are happy." "I am thrilled," he said, pulling back to look at her. "Scared out of my mind, but thrilled. We are going to be parents." The pregnancy was not easy. Grisha was sick in the mornings and tired all the time. As she grew larger, the physical work of the farm became harder for her. Petra took on more of the labor, and friends from both communities stepped in to help. Human women brought food and advice. Orc women shared their own experiences and offered to serve as midwives when the time came. Their child was born on a cold winter morning as the first snow of the season began to fall. The labor was long and difficult, and Petra wore grooves in the floor from pacing. But when he finally heard the baby's cry when Grisha called for him and he entered the bedroom to see her holding a tiny bundle, his heart nearly burst. "A son," she said, tears streaming down her face. "We have a son." Petra looked at the baby, taking in the green-tinged skin, the small pointed ears, the tuft of dark hair. He had his mother's coloring but his father's nose and chin, a perfect blend of both parents. "He is beautiful," Petra breathed. They named him Dane, which meant from the valley in the old tongue, a nod to the valley where the Broken Fang clan had settled. Dane Jameson, a child of 2 worlds, the birth of their son sent ripples through both communities. Some saw it as an abomination, proof that the mixing of races should never have been allowed. But others saw it differently, as a symbol of hope and possibility. A child who was both human and orc, who belonged to both peoples and could help bridge the divide between them. Elder Kara came to visit when Dane was a week old, bringing gifts and blessings. She held the baby with gentle hands, looking into his face with an expression of wonder. "He will be something special," she said. "A bridge between worlds, the first of a new people." "He will be whatever he chooses to be," Grisha said firmly. "We will not burden him with expectations." "Fair enough," Kara said with a smile. "But whether you wish it or not, he will be important. His very existence challenges the old hatreds and fears. He is proof that a different future is possible." As Dane grew from an infant to a toddler, he became a familiar sight around the farm and at trading days. Human children were curious about him, and orc children claimed him as one of their own. He learned words in both languages simultaneously and seemed equally comfortable in both communities. Petra and Grisha watched their son with a mixture of pride and protectiveness. They knew the challenges he would face, the prejudices he would encounter. But they also saw the way he brought people together, how his innocent presence softened hard hearts and opened closed minds. On Dane's third birthday, they held a celebration that brought together more than 100 people, evenly split between humans and orcs. There was food and music and games, and for that day at least, old enmities were forgotten. Children played together without regard to species. Adults who had once viewed each other with suspicion now shared drinks and stories. Standing at the edge of the gathering, watching his son laugh as he was chased by a mixed group of human and orc children, Petra felt Grisha slip her hand into his. "Look at what we have built," she said softly. "We built a family," he replied. "The rest just happened around us." "No," she said. "It happened because of us. Because you set a table for two instead of throwing scraps. Because you saw me as a person, not a monster. Everything that came after all of this started with that one act of kindness." Petra turned to face her, this remarkable woman who had stumbled into his life starving and desperate and had become his whole world. "Best decision I ever made," he said. She smiled, her tusks flashing white against her green skin. "Mine too." The years that followed were not without their struggles. There were still those on both sides who rejected the peace, who clung to old hatreds. There were incidents and setbacks, moments when it seemed like all their work might unravel. But the foundation they had helped build proved stronger than they had dared hope. The Broken Fang clan flourished, growing in numbers as more orcs seeking a different path joined them. Trade between the clan and human settlements became routine, profitable for both sides. Intermarriages, while still uncommon, were no longer unheard of. Petra and Grisha's example had shown that it was possible, and a handful of other brave souls had followed their lead. Petra's farm prospered too. With Grisha's strength and his knowledge, they cultivated more land and raised more livestock. Dane grew into a healthy, happy child, comfortable in both his heritages. They took in other outcasts sometimes, both human and orc, offering them the same welcome that had once been offered to Grisha. On the 10th anniversary of the day Grisha had first appeared at Petra's fence, they sat together at their table under the oak tree, watching the sun set over their land. Dane was with friends at the orc settlement, spending the weekend there as he often did. They had the evening to themselves. 10 years, Grisha said. "It feels like both forever and no time at all." "I know what you mean," Petra replied. He was graying at the temples now, and Grisha had a few silver strands in her dark hair. They were no longer young, but they were happy. "You ever regret it?" she asked. "Taking me in, loving me, all the complications that came with it." "Never," he said without hesitation. "Not for one moment. You are the best thing in my life, Grisha. You and Dane. Everything else is just details." She leaned against him, and they sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear overhead. They had built something remarkable together, something that started with a simple act of kindness and grew into a legacy that would outlast them both. In the years to come, Dane would grow into a strong and wise young man, becoming a leader in his own right, helping to further unite the human and orc communities. He would have children of his own, and they would have children, and the line of Jameson would continue, a living bridge between two peoples. But that was all in the future. For now, there was just this moment, two people who had found each other against all odds, who had built a life and a family and a better world. Petra took Grisha's hand and she laced her fingers through his. "I love you," he said. "I love you too," she replied. "Always." And as the stars wheeled overhead and the night breeze rustled through the wheat fields, they sat together in perfect contentment, husband and wife, orc and human, two hearts beating as one. The farm that had once belonged to Petra alone was now truly theirs, a place of peace and love in a world that desperately needed both. The oak tree under which they sat had been there for generations, had sheltered Petra's grandfather and father before him. Now it sheltered them, and one day it would shelter their grandchildren. And perhaps, in that distant future, no one would remember a time when humans and orcs were enemies, when love between them was forbidden. Perhaps they would only know the world that Petra and Grisha had helped create, where such love was natural and accepted. But even if that day never came, even if prejudice and hatred persisted, it did not matter. Because they had each other and they had their son, and they had built a life filled with purpose and joy. They had proven that kindness could triumph over fear, that love could bridge any divide, and it had all started with one simple choice, one moment of compassion. The starving orc warrior had asked for scraps at the fence, and the farmer had set the table for two instead. Everything else had followed from that.